Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today. We are on the very first part of our Azure Integration Made Easier for Customers webinar, and we hope to maybe that this may extend to future webinars as well. I would like to do just a very brief introduction. So my name is Danny Hayter. Work here at 345 Technology within the business development. And I'm also joined by Andrew Rivers, who is 345 CEO and Sales Director. We are, thanks, Andrew. So we are a Microsoft solution partner. We specialize in application and data integration, and we like to think we're best at connecting your systems together, integration your business processes. We also like to look at design, build, support, and we manage your solutions in Azure Cloud. So what we're going to cover today is, firstly, we're going to cover the full technology stack required from start to finish of your integration journey. And that will be the integration problem space. Some examples of business scenarios, and as I mentioned there, the full Azure technology stack from top to bottom. We only have 30 minutes today, so what we're going to try and do is we set aside some time at the end of the 30 minutes, and we want to have a Q&A session there. So if you have questions or any comments, we want to pick those up towards the end, and hopefully we can just have some discussion time there. So takeaways, what you will take away from today is understanding how integration technologies can improve your business, the technology stack and what that actually looks like within inside Azure, and how that can accelerate your own implementation and your own integration journey. So from here on in, I'm now going to pass over to Andrew Rivers, and he will start with the problem space, and I will catch you at the end for some Q&A and questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Right, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm gonna move quite quickly through all this. Okay, what we talk about integration on Azure, the problem space. If we look at the goals, really, the main things we're looking to achieve. I mean, firstly, efficiency and cost reduction. Which business doesn't want to be more efficient, either to reduce cost or to actually achieve more with the same amount of people? Secondly, process consistency is the thing we're looking for. So a major source of customer and employee dissatisfaction is when processes are inconsistently executed. So the more that we can automate those processes and have them execute consistently, that gives us a much better experience for all involved. And thirdly, we're looking at agility. Everyone wants digital transformation, and yet people find that their digital transformation projects often get mired in quicksand. So how do we actually put the right tools in place to make that sort of agility possible? But there are a number of obstacles. If it was, we all want those things, and it's not easy. So what are the obstacles that get in the place? I mean, one of them is complexity. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. We've all got legacy systems now. We've been building up a collection of applications for a long time, and having that legacy and dealing with that legacy kind of is a difficult problem. And there's, and around that, one of the things that we often find is that when we've tried to do business processes before, we've just tactically made connections between different systems, and you end up with a whole load of spaghetti in the middle that is really hard to unpick, because no one really has proper governance on it. No one knows what's there, and let's get some right tools in place to address that. Okay, so if you were, 10 or 15 years ago, if you were looking at your business, you'd have a bunch of servers in a data center, you'd have your applications installed on them, and that would pretty much be that. And if you wanted to connect things together, you could fudge something, you could delve into various databases, you could do, some tactical work to get everything you needed talking to each other, or you could be doing it the proper way and doing the right patterns and all that sort of thing. But your business would not be that complicated. But let's have a just look at the complexity piece for a start. So now you've got your custom apps, but they could be on-prem, they could be co-located, they could be in the cloud, they could be in multiple clouds. Same with your enterprise systems. Those could be SaaS, they could be in the cloud, they could be on-prem. You've no doubt collected loads of databases over the last 20 years. loads of data sources. Some of them could have originated outside your business, some could be inside, some of them could be the data from a line of business app you discontinued 10 years ago, but you've still got all that data. Social channels are really important. I mean, we often hear about social media being a key thing for marketing, but it's also a key channel now for customer service as well. And how do you know that that's performing? How do you actually integrate that into your business? How do you know what, how do you get the measurements from that? We're also pushing an increasing number of apps out to mobiles and tablets. Now, the customer app is obviously a well-trodden path now, but actually the real opportunity and a lot of things in digital transformation programs now are actually putting specific apps into the hands of employees to do a specific task in their job. And so how do we actually enable that more easily? The business is ever more complex, and you're expected to make sense of it and be able to sort of communicate that to the rest of the business. So how do you actually, where does the analytics fit into this picture? We've already mentioned that products could be SaaS products. It's great having someone else maintain your software so that you don't have to do that, but actually they've also got your data. So how do you pull your data in? How do you take ownership of your data when someone else is actually hosting it? And then we look at what we hear is IoT, but basically the device side of it, which could be the temperature sensors in your offices. It could be tracking your vehicles. It could be how your machinery is operating. All those different things. The condition of various bits of infrastructure. All these different components. So the picture we've got now is so much more complex than it was before. And one of the things I'm interested to ask you all on the webinar is, what's your experience with this as a whole? Have you tried bringing it all together, and what's the experience been? Has it been slow? Has it been painful? Do you put up with actually dealing with it piecemeal, or have you actually been really successful at pulling that together? Another view on this is that we can look at it in layers as well. So if we look at the big chunky core systems in your business, which could be your CRM, ERP, maybe your warehouse management systems if you're in retail or manufacturing, maybe your financials, your HR. These are systems that have got an awful lot of value. They've been building up data for in some cases decades. They're really, really important. They're really, really high risk and slow to change, because anything you want to do with them takes a lot of time because you can't afford to get it wrong. So when you have a digital transformation and you want to do it fast, what you can't do is you can't change these core systems. You have to work around them, you have to work with them, but what you can't do is be expected to change them and move fast. Because really where you want to innovate is the things that are in the hands of your users, whether they be customers, employees, or your suppliers. And that's where the innovation happens. But where there's the big gap is, how do all these things in the hands of the user actually interact with these lumbering, slow to change, sometimes hard to connect to legacy systems? And so what we often refer to as the integration space is the bit that's in the middle, which is where you enable this to happen, which is putting in the connectivity, making nice API layers over the top of that so that you can interact with those core things in the business, but in a really easy to consume way. And that's really what enables the pace of innovation. And the pace of innovation is what enables you to do the process re-engineering, to get the cost efficiency and get the consistency of execution. And just to illustrate this, I'm just going to look at a couple of really, really simple business scenarios, because they're actually very illustrative of how quickly something that seems really simple can suddenly become really complex. And you can understand the value from that. So I've picked the first one as being employee onboarding, because every business has this. In large businesses, people are onboarded every week, and how effectively you can execute this process has a great impact on how productive that person can be, but also their view of the competence of their new employer. But a new employee, if you had to take someone on, I mean, they need to go in the HR system, they need to be set up on payroll, they need to be possibly set up on the pensions, which could be a different system outside your business. If they need to do a timesheet, or if they're on a rota, they need to be in another system. And depending on their job role, they could be in, if they're in design, they could be in a PLM system. If they're in manufacturing, ERP, they might be in a CRM. They're probably going to need Active Directory, Office, maybe a phone number allocating, given access to the building, given a laptop and that being recorded in your asset management system, given a security pass, maybe even allocated a desk if that's also part of your supported by system. So even something as simple as this has up to, you can be 12 or 15 systems easily that you might need to interact with, even on this very, very easy business process. Now you may say, okay, we don't do that very often, so we can kind of fudge our way through that. But let's look at another people process, which is just absence. Now this happens obviously on a daily basis. Any company that's got more than, I don't know, 100 people has probably got someone out every single day. And so dealing with these processes is actually really, really important, because if you get people's money wrong, that causes you a lot of trouble. And again, what you kind of think of as really, well, someone's off sick, how hard can it be? But obviously that needs reporting in an HR system. It may actually affect payroll because the statutory sick pay and all that sort of thing. You might need to recalculate holiday pay if they're not on if they're not on a fixed hours contract, or if they do overtime. Then if they're absent, that's going to actually affect their holiday pay calculation. So you need to do that. Again, tell the time and attendance system they're not there. If they've got tasks in the project management system, you might want to reschedule those. If they're in manufacturing and production, then you might need to say that the widgets that they were going to make aren't going to get made today, and so that might reschedule a whole load of other production. And even something as simple as rescheduling their meetings. So again, even though you've got something like absence, which takes place very often, that can still involve 6 other systems very easily that need to be part of that process, and that process needs to execute correctly. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is really the technology that underpins this. So when we are looking at the technology, what we want to do is to support a number of key capabilities. Because if we look at integration's a bit of a very broad church, but there are some key capabilities we're looking at now. One of them is we need to be able to provide and consume APIs, because that whole picture we looked at before is made easier by putting a nice clean API layer on top of the other parts of your business, so that you can interact with your business via an API layer. You need to support multiple communication formats, but also multiple message formats. So if you're communicating with something like Twitter, you want to just be able to say, search for this type of message, or search for this hashtag, and and then bring that into your customer service, and not worry about whether it's HTTP and whether it's XML or whether it's JSON. Ideally, you want to be able to say, I know I've got the tool set to cope with this, and that's all going to be handled. So being able to handle those formats either natively or via a connector, really, really important. Process orchestration. If this happens, then do ABC. And very closely tied to that is the event handling, because the whole thing of if this happens, then do that. That is the key thing of automation. That is fundamentally what automation is. And so it's understanding what those events are, how those events get raised, and how those events get handled is a key part of the tool set for all of this. So I'm now going to go through the full technology stack that supports this in Azure. And I've got this in multiple layers. So, actually, I stand corrected. I've got a slide before that. So the approaches you can take are, you can buy a product that does it all, or you can use kind of code toolkits that allow you at a very granular level to do that, or you can build on cloud native technologies. And there are pros and cons for all of these. Now, if you buy a product will give you everything you need, but it'll come with a price tag. That's probably the most expensive option, and you're probably paying for a lot of functionality that you don't need, and the sums of money can be quite significant. If you're using the toolkit, you're right at the other side, kind of, you're right at the DIY end. You're building stuff yourself, and so that can be the cheapest in terms of buying licenses, but the most in terms of labor. And then in the middle, you've kind of got building on cloud native technologies. So that allows you to have the best of both worlds in that you're only using what you need. So you're not buying, you haven't got a huge amount of capital expenditure. It's purely on a consumption basis, but you've still got to do a bit more work to build that up. And so now I'm going to go through into how that technology stack looks like in Azure, which is, in terms of layers, we can look at the perimeter. So we use Traffic Manager for the DNS routing so that when a call comes in externally, so let's say one of your SaaS applications wants to tell you something, we can route that to the correct data center. We then use App Gateway for firewall capabilities, and we use API management for our API layer to provide externally facing and internally facing APIs. And then in the processing, we use Azure App Service to supply the compute. We use Logic Apps to supply connectors, process orchestration, and also message translation. Azure Functions allow us to handle events and to plug in little bits of code to do specific things as part of our process. And then there's a couple of things that work together very similarly. We use Service Bus and Event Grid for event handling and message processing. So Service Bus is very technically rich, but you wouldn't use it, but much lower throughput applications. So publish and subscribe, detailed message routing, that kind of thing. If you want ordered delivery, those kind of scenarios, Service Bus. And then if you've got loads and loads of events, like in maybe in an IoT scenario where you've got thousands of data points going through every second, Event Grid's the ideal technology to be handling those, that kind of really high throughput. And then behind that, obviously, there is storage because you need to store state on this. And then, that gives you all the components you need to do all of this process orchestration. However, it's very easy to build something really fast that isn't very secure. So and isn't very easy to support. So actually, looking at the layer underneath that, the ops and security layer, there's a lot in there to make this all work. So we want secure networks, and to access those networks via secure private endpoints. We want to keep our secrets safe. So Key Vault comes in there. We want to monitor those endpoints and monitor our APIs for security attacks. So that's where we can use Defender for Cloud. We want to make sure that people can't do things in an insecure way, so we can apply policy over this. We want to be able to monitor our security, but also monitor the success and failure of our business processes, so we can put Azure Monitor in there. And then if we need to diagnose what the issues are, if anything goes wrong, Application Insights gives us that diagnostic data. And then this is just tagged on for the security, but it's really a dependency that would be at on a business level component, which is your Active Directory or your Azure AD, so that we can use that as an identity store and have a consistent way of identity management across the whole stack. And then there's the deployment DevOps layer. So, typically we're using Azure DevOps, although depending on customer choice, we might also use GitHub. We lean heavily on Terraform. And then one of the things you find, if you actually lock down all these components above, you can't deploy into a VNet if very easily, because a lot of the Azure command line commands go over the secure internet. So if everything is in a secure network, you need to actually be able to tunnel in there and deploy from the inside. So that's where we can deploy Terraform scripts from VMs and use Azure Bastion to secure that and to actually securely get into our environment to deploy. So that is quite a big technology stack. But when we're looking at the capabilities, there's only those 5 components there that do all the heavy lifting. Everything else is really the enablement and the security around that. So you want to have those 5 components. That's where you're doing your development, but all those other things actually make up the whole picture. Okay, so why is this hard? Well, really, there are a lot of components. As you can see, you want to develop on five specific Azure components to make your integration solutions, but there's a lot of components there to deal with. Security is an important thing. No one wants to have an insecure platform, and having that security mindset is a really is important, but it's not easy. And there are multiple skill sets involved in this, from the DevOps, the deployment, the testing, the security, the operations, and the monitoring. Multiple skill sets come into play. So what we want to do is we want to make this more easy for you. And by doing that, what we've done, and this is the plug, but it's really, but we're happy to talk about this and share this information anyway. But we've pulled all this together into a platform that we call 345 Air. So what we can do is use this as an accelerator to say, let's get the infrastructure in place really fast, and then that allows you to build your business processes, your and your event handling and your message handling and connect your APIs and provide all that agile digital transformation, but to accelerate that by saying, here's a load of infrastructure we can put in for a start, which gives you almost the best things that a product would give you, because you can put it in out of the box, but then it gives you the best benefits of Azure, because you are able to just use it on a consumption basis, and you're only really paying for what you use. Because a lot of these components we see around the on the underneath on the security layer, they're actually really cheap in terms of Azure consumption, but they're really important in terms of security and operations. So most of your consumption comes with your app service and your API management, and the rest of it, there are a lot of components there, but they're actually quite cheap. So we're actually still got a very cost efficient and a very full integration platform that provides pretty much what you get from a really expensive product, but we can put that in really fast, allowing you to develop your solutions on top of. So let's just wrap this up. So in summary, the toolkit we've got in Azure gives you everything you need. We can do the business process orchestration. We can make cost efficient processes. We can make consistently executing processes, and we can provide APIs on top of your enterprise that allow you to be agile. However, and potentially this can be at a much lower cost, because it is still purely on a consumption basis. There is no capital cost involved. It's purely consumption. But there are a lot of moving parts to take care of. And our reference architecture, 345 Air, which accelerates this, is a way that you can actually take advantage of all this goodness in Azure, but do that at a fraction of the time and accelerate your integration. Right now, this is a code accelerator that we're happy to talk to you about. In the future, this might be going straight from Azure Marketplace. So keep an eye on that. We'll definitely share that information when we have it. So that is pretty much a lightning tour of the technology stack for integration on Azure. Danny, I'm going to hand back over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. So we are now going to go into a Q&A. We don't have any questions at the minute, but if there is anybody that has a question or anything that they'd like to add, so we've still got some time, please add that into the Q&A box or the chat box, whatever you prefer. I think this is a good point to say that we are going to send these slides out, so everybody who has signed up to the webinar will get a copy of these slides. Tumbleweed.
Hey, that's okay. So what I would say is, if when you're digesting this recording and you have any other questions, then feel free to just ping those questions over to us on the details here, and we'll be more than happy to answer those offline.
Great stuff. So before we end the call, I think before we end the webinar, we just want to have a little bit of a quick insight into our information. So obviously you've got our email addresses there if you want to get in touch. What we'd also like to do is demonstrate 345 Air, and if there's anybody that would like to see that demonstration, we'd like to book that in as a separate call and show you that and just have a little bit more of a deeper dive into how that may work for your current integration and your journey. I think we are happy with everything we've got there. If there's any more questions, I don't think there is.
No, let's wrap up.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for
Okay.
joining.
Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you on the next one. Okay. Bye now.
Bye.